Oh hi there, and welcome to Super Skarmory's Chrono Trigger walkthrough. If you're new to my videos, I bid you welcome. I hope you enjoy. If you're a long-time viewer, welcome back. And this is a game I've been waiting years to cover, and I've finally gotten around to it. It is my all-time favorite video game ever, Chrono Trigger. If you've not played this game, I cannot recommend it enough. It's an RPG. It was originally produced on the SNES, and it was later ported to the PlayStation and the Nintendo DS. Now, I'm going to be doing this walkthrough series on the DS version, but if you're playing an older version of the game, don't panic. You can still use this guide. There isn't too many changes between this and the older versions. If you are somebody who likes to play games to the fullest, I will be showing how to do everything there is to do in Chrono Trigger. So hopefully, if you need any help with the game, you should have no problems if you follow this guide. Before we begin, I'd like to apologize. This is the first video, and it's going to be a little bit boring. There's a lot of beginner stuff to go over, a lot of how to play the game. So if you're familiar with how Chrono Trigger works, I apologize. Video might be a bit boring. The action will kick off in the next video. Before we actually jump into the game, it actually gives you a few game options, and they're kind of semi-important. The first is the game mode, DS versus Classic. It just changes the aesthetic appearance when you're in combat. The Classic version is basically the SNES, and the DS version is what I'm going to be using. It's just the updated menu that allows you to use both screens. Battle mode's also a little bit important. Basically, when you fight, there's a battle gauge that fills up depending on your character's speed, and when it's filled up, you can make an action. Now, if you have it set to active, when you're ready to make an action, the battle will still keep going, so if you take forever to make a move, the enemies are going to keep attacking. Wait will pause the battle so that you can think about what you're doing. It's a personal preference thing. I prefer active, but if you're somebody who takes their time when you fight battles, you might want to do wait. And then movies, that's just cutscenes. There's no reason to turn that off unless you want to be more classic like the SNES. Anyways, before you also begin, you'll get to name your main character of the game. Unfortunately, there's a 6-character cap. Now, this is Chrono. He is your main protagonist of the story, and he will be with you for the majority of the game in your party. I will be referring to him as Chrono, even though I'm naming him after myself, so just keep that in mind. I will always refer to him as Chrono. Chrono is your generic, all-in-one, silent protagonist. He doesn't speak much. He fights with katanas for a weapon, and his elemental magic spells are lightning-oriented. He's got good physical damage, good magic damage. The only thing he doesn't really have that I wish he had was some healing magic, but that's okay. You don't really need that. So, he's a great all-around character, and I hope you like him because he's the main hero. And with that, let us begin. Oh, hi, Mom. Thanks for waking me up, because my alarm clock didn't go off this morning. True story. Okay, well, the Millennial Fair. Yeah, that's why I overslept. I totally didn't go to bed last night till 4 in the morning, because I was giddy over the Millennial Fair. Okay, I'm getting out of bed, I swear. I want to have fun. It's okay. Welcome to Gardea! Gardea is the beautiful and the luxurious kingdom of peace and tranquility. And today, It is celebrating its 1000th year of being a kingdom. That's right, the Millennial Fair. Yay! Head down the steps and your mom's going to be like, oh yeah, by the way, that adventurous friend of yours, I totally forgot her name. Mom, you're pulling a Professor Oak on me. Can't remember your own grandchild's name. Anyways, this is Luca that she's going to talk about. You can name her. I will refer to her throughout the guide as Luca. And Luca is kind of a geeky, nerdy type character. And she's, how do I put this? Way, way before her time. She's very, very intelligent. So she won't join your party for fighting and stuff for a little bit, but you can name her now. And you're supposed to go stop and see her new invention at the fair. Because inventions never go wrong, right? Right? Oh, look at the cute little kitty. You're cute. You're cute. He's a cute little kitty. Oh, by the way, grab your allowance. 200 gold. Now, early in the game, gold is kind of hard to come by, but later in the game you have so much gold you won't know what to do with it. But yeah, you should pick up that 200 gold. It's helpful. You don't start out with too much gold. You can also pull up your menu. I'd say the main thing to look at right now is the settings, see if you want to change anything. There isn't too much to change off of the default stuff, but a lot of it is personal taste. I'm going to be using mainly the generic settings. And then probably the other thing worth mentioning is you can also look at all of your playable characters, and you can also adjust their equipment and look at their stats. You open up the menu pressing X. Chrono doesn't start off with too many interesting things. He has pretty weak stats since he's level 1, and he has a wooden sword, a hide cap, a hide tunic, and a little headband on his head. So that is Chrono for you. I'll go over the other settings and stuff at a future time. Anyways, welcome to Truce. This little town square here is the village of Truce. The castle to the west is home to Gardea Castle. Now, if you want to bolt through the story and get a move on and jump right into the action, you're going to want to head north up to Lena Square. This is where the Millennial Fair is taking place. But I'm going to be going over the basics, the beginner stuff. If you're new to the game, you should take a look around and explore everything. Generally speaking, in RPGs, it's always good to talk to everyone because it helps you out with the game. Now, I love Chrono Trigger to death for many reasons, but one of those reasons is this game just has a flat-out amazing storyline. It's a work of art in terms of story, so not only is talking to everyone help you through the game, but it's also just, I think the people in the game are incredibly interesting. So definitely talk to everyone, especially if you're new to the game. If you're familiar with the game and you're just watching for nostalgia purposes, you don't have to worry about it if you know what everyone says. Over here is the market. This will come into play later. For now, the stalls in the Millennial Fair. And then there's also an inn over here. Now, there's inns all throughout the game, and inns serve the purpose of healing up your health and magic. There's no reason ever to stay at Truce Inn. Why? Because you could just go sleep in your home. And that's free instead of 10 gold. Not that 10 gold is a lot. No, I have not actually been to the fair. I know, 1,000 years only happens so often. And I personally think the Millennial Fair is way cooler than watching some stupid ball drop in New York Times Square. That's just me. If you talk to this lady, you can buy her a drink for 10 gold if you're nice, and in exchange she'll play a song that, I kid you not, you can walk 10 feet west of Truce and listen to it. So only buy her a drink if you're a nice guy, but otherwise it's a waste of money. If you come up talk to this guy, he's going to mention an earthquake, and if you think you're insane, you're not, because there's absolutely nothing to do with an earthquake in this game except for this guy. It's actually a reference to the beta stages of Chrono Trigger, because in the original early stages, the bridge west of here was knocked out. but they later changed that. So that's what the earthquake reference was to. And they never really changed the guy's text. Up here is a chest. You'll see a lot of those throughout the course of this game. Don't worry about it since you can't open them. That'll come into play later down the line. And then there's the Mayor Manor. Sorry, this is the boring part of the game. This is the ins and outs of how to play Chrono Trigger. The Mayor Manor is basically a place to help you learn about how Chrono Trigger works. And there's also some added things in here that are DS related, like you can use the touchscreen to walk. I don't know why anyone would want to use the touchscreen to walk. I've tried it before, I just can't get comfortable with it. I think it's very weird. This lady's going to teach you about weapons and armor. Now there are 7 playable characters in Chrono Trigger. They all use different types of weapons, and some are male and female, so certain types of armor and helmets are for certain types of characters. And there's also accessories, some specific to certain characters. And she'll also mention which stats affect certain weapons. There are 2 long-ranged characters in the game that use crossbows and guns, and their strength is increased through the accuracy stat instead of strength, like melee weapons such as katanas and swords. So just keep that in mind, it's helpful to know. You can pick up a free potion here, and over here this guy is going to talk about save points. If you need help saving your game, there are 2 ways to save your game. Well, 2 methods of saving your game. One, you can always save on the overworld. So, like the overworld that we came in to get to the Mayor Manor, you can always save out there. And then you can also save at these save points. They're little sparkly points. Now this is just a replica, but you'll see them throughout the game. And at them, you can also use an item called shelters, which this guy talks about. Shelters are basically what the inns do. Fully restore your hit points and magic points. Now, if you're uncomfortable with Chrono Trigger, you haven't played through the game before, it's very helpful to heal up when you're unsure about where you're at, because you never know when you might need to be healed up. I've played this game like 50 to 100 times, I kid you not. I love this game so much, I could sit down and play it whenever and always enjoy it. So, I know how to get through this game inside and out, so there's times where I won't even use shelters because I don't need to. This lady will talk about menu shortcuts. Menu shortcuts are a DS thing that you can use on the touch screen. I personally never really used them. That's a personal taste thing again. Up here you can learn about some of the ins and outs of combat. This guy's going to teach you about the attack command, or the battle commands. Attack, tech, and item. When your battle gauge fills up and you're ready to make an action, you can use an attack, which is your basic attack. This is your weapon. So swords, guns, whatever your character uses a basic attack. Techs we'll get into in a second with the guy to the left. And items are self-explanatory. It's whatever items you want to use throughout the battle. And if you talk to this guy, he's going to go over techs. Now, techs are important. Techs are the magic system of Chrono Trigger. There are so many different types of techs. There are healing techs, there are status techs, there are magic techs, there's melee techs. The first example that they show is actually kind of important because this is Chrono's first tech that you start with, called Cyclone. Cyclone will hit all enemies in an area. So the example shows, hey, if you target the top enemy, it'll only hit the top 2 enemies because it hits in a radius. If you target that middle enemy though, you can hit all 3 enemies. Now different techs have different types of attack radiuses. Some attack in lines, some attack around the character themselves, some attack in areas, some attack just one character, and some hit everybody on the screen. And like I said, there's different types of attacks. There are magical type attacks. There's 4 elements in Chrono Trigger magic: dark, light, water, and fire. There's also ice, but that's considered water, just so you don't get confused. If I ever say ice magic, it's the same as water magic. They're both classified under the same thing. And certain enemies may be completely immune to magic, or they may be weak to several types of magic and immune to different types of melee attacks. So you have to really understand the different types of enemies, and you have to use what's best against it. magic and understanding magic is essential to learning how to beat Chrono Trigger. And there's also other types of magic. Like I said, healing magic is very important. Something a lot of people don't know about Chrono Trigger, and it took me forever to find this out. You can actually use healing magic outside of battle. Typically speaking, you can get through the entire game of Chrono Trigger with minimal potion usage. Early on in the game might be the only time you actually need potions, because most of the time you'll have somebody on your party who can heal you. Yes, enlighten me with insight. Basically, when you finish a battle, you will gain gold, experience, and tech points. Tech points will help level up your techs. The more tech points you have, the more techs you get access to. Every character has 8 base single techs, and then depending on what experience your characters have, they can eventually learn dual types and triple techs, which you can use with multiple team party members. This lady's going to teach you about status effects. Status effects are very straightforward. If you're familiar with video gaming in general, most of this stuff should be familiar with you. I know a lot of my viewers watch me for Pokemon, so if you've played Pokemon before, a lot of this stuff should seem familiar. A lot of it's just basic video game status effects. If you're younger and you're new to video games, some of this stuff might be new. Status effects will be throughout the game, but mostly bosses tend to use them. There are a few generic enemies that use them. You can use a panacea to completely remove them during battle, or you can just wait them out. And then she'll also mention the KO status. If you get knocked out in combat, you can't attack or do anything with that fallen party member. You can use an Athenian water or a tech to revive them. Most of the techs that revive, though, are late game, so you won't get access to them for a while. So Athenian waters are probably going to be what you use if you need them during the battle. If the battle ends and they're still KO'd, they will revive after the battle with 1 hit point, so you can heal them up after the battle. This guy mentions L and R buttons can be used to run away from combat. I actually did not know this for the longest time. I probably played through this game 5 or 6 times without knowing you could run from battle. Honestly, I highly recommend that you try not to run from most battles. I personally think that Chrono Trigger is a game that you don't want to run from battles very much. You'll fall behind and it's not good to do. If you fight everything, you won't ever have to level grind to beat this game if you just fight everything and do everything. Chrono Trigger's... the only exception to this would be if you're trying to do a low level run, but if you're watching this for guide purposes, you're probably not wanting to do a low level run. Chrono Trigger can actually be beaten at pretty low levels if you're experienced enough. Down here is Luca's house. There's nothing to do there now, only her mom is there. You can talk to her if you want. You can come back there later in the game for items, but for now there's nothing to do. And then up here is the Gardea Forest. If you want to get familiar with combat and you want to get comfortable with the game in general, go to the Gardea Forest. It's a good place to try things out. However, I'm going to cover it at a later point in time when you actually have to go through it. For the enemies there are all pretty low leveled, and it's pretty easy to get experience there if you need any experience learning the basics. You can go to the Zenon Bridge if you want. There's people who are all heading to the fair. Nothing much to do. That bridge will lead you down to the southern continent. And down here there's another village, and this village is the village of Poor. Now, it is helpful to remember locations, because I will reference them a lot if you have to go here at later points in the game. Truce is your hometown, Poor is down here. There is another Mayor Manor, but this Mayor house doesn't teach you how to play the game. It actually has a very, interesting mayor, to say the least. You can spin around 3 times and click like a chicken. Weird. 10 gold! Hey, it's free money! You can actually do that an infinite number of times if you want. I don't recommend that as a method to grind gold, but if you need some extra gold, there you have it. Most of his kids hate him. He's apparently a very greedy mayor. more sealed chests, and then there's also a chest right there that contains a free shelter. Never know when you might need one of those. Shelters are one of the most useful items in the game, just because they fully heal up your team. I want to go to the fair too. I want to go to the fair, but I'll be doing that next part. And then there's also a inn down here if you want to sleep, and there's a market that you can buy things at. I'm going to cover buying stuff at the Millennial Fair next part. And then there's also a snail shop. This will come in handy later in the game. Yes, some monsters can coexist with humans. Don't be surprised if you see monsters throughout the game. The world doesn't just consist of humans. Very, very important to understand. This guy will sell you spicy jerky. You'll want to buy that later, way down the road, like towards the end of the game. But for now, don't worry. I know you don't have that kind of money. And the piano player will actually play you some songs. You won't actually be able to hear these songs till somewhat later in the game. So, I guess that's kind of cool. And then there is one last thing we can do on the overworld. We can ride the ferry. Yay! It's 10 gold, one-way trip. It'll take you between Truce and Poor. There's absolutely no reason to do this. It's just something cool that you can do that the game developers put in. So that wraps up this part. I know it was a little bit boring. I know it was a lot of information. We'll be experiencing a little bit more action next part. Anyways, we can now head back to Truce, and next time we will cover the Millennial Fair. That is all for this video. Thank you, and good night.